execution of Robert Alton Harris may have made capital punishment even more controversial.
14 years ago, Harris abducted two teenage boys, John Majewski and Michael Baker, executing them in cold blood before finishing their half-eaten burgers. He needed their car for a bank robbery. Hours later, he was caught.
When California begins to execute people, no longer can executions be regarded as a Southern phenomenon. With the execution of Mr. Harris, it has become mainstream America.
He was the first man to die in California's gas chamber in 25 years. But before Robert Alton Harris took his final breath, the world watched a legal circus unfold in real time. A crime so senseless, a trial so polarizing, and a countdown so chaotic, it reignited America's death penalty debate. This is not just the story of a killer, but of a justice system on trial. In 1978, Harris and his younger brother Daniel needed a car for a bank robbery. But instead of stealing one, they ambushed 16-year-olds John Majewski and Michael Baker, two teens out getting burgers. Robert forced them to drive to a secluded area, then shot them both execution style. If that wasn't enough, he casually ate their half-eaten food and used their car to rob a bank. The brutality of this act horrified the public, and by the time he stood trial, there was little sympathy left. Harris was convicted and sentenced to death, but the punishment would take 14 years to carry out. He ordered them to exit the vehicle and pulled the trigger. After the murders, Harris reportedly finished off the boys' half-eaten burgers. From 1979 to 1992, Harris lived on California's death row. During that time, the gas chamber sat unused, frozen in legal limbo. Appeals flooded the courts, challenging everything from Harris's mental health to the constitutionality of cyanide gas. At one point, he came within seconds of execution, only for a last-minute call to pull him back. The system, critics said, was either too slow or too cruel. On April 20th, 1992, the staff at San Quentin braced for what would be the state's first execution in a generation. The prison went into lockdown. Harris's family visited for the last time. At 6 p.m., the death watch began. A mattress, a blanket, a Bible, and the slow ticking of time. For hours, Harris waited to die, only to be pulled back over and over again. At dawn on April 21st, the legal back and forth finally ended. At 6:05 a.m., Harris was strapped into Chair A. His final meal, KFC, pizzas, Pepsi, jelly beans, Camel cigarettes. His final words, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everybody dances with the Grim Reaper." Witnesses saw him gasp, twitch, and fall still. The chamber that had sat silent for decades was active once more. At 6:05 a.m., the lever dropped. Witnesses described a strange hush as Harris looked down. At 6:21 a.m., the warden officially declared him dead. To some, justice had finally been served. To others, it was a barbaric throwback. Harris's execution reignited fierce debate about methods, morality, and the role of revenge. Lawsuits followed. In 1996, a federal judge declared California's gas chamber unconstitutional. Harris's death had become more than a punishment. It was a catalyst for reform. Criminal justice consultant Bob Spangenberg predicts some states may drop the death penalty because of money, health, highways, public safety. Inside the witness chamber, emotions were raw. Some victims' families shed tears, others watched stone-faced. One witness recalled Harris turning his head and mouthing the words, "I'm sorry." Whether it was sincere or staged, the moment froze in memory. The execution wasn't just a punishment, it was a performance, and everyone had a front row seat.
But everybody dances with the Grim Reaper.
Robert Alton Harris is gone, but the ripples of his execution remain. His case exposed the flaws, the fears, and the philosophical battles within America's death penalty system. Was it justice or spectacle, closure or cruelty? In the end, Harris didn't just die in a gas chamber. He became part of the ongoing story of how we define justice when a life is on the line. He was blind, diabetic, bound to a wheelchair. At 76, Clarence Ray Allen was no longer the violent gang leader of decades past, but the state of California saw no room for mercy. His execution in 2006 became a flashpoint in the national debate over capital punishment. Was this justice or retribution past its expiration date? Clarence Ray Allen was executed at the age of 76 on January 17, 2006, in the state of California. He was the second oldest inmate to be executed since executions were reinstated in 1976. Behind the frail figure strapped to the gurney was a terrifying legacy. Allen wasn't just a murderer, he was a mastermind. In the 1970s, he led the violent Ray Allen gang, which evolved from robberies to witness assassinations. His downfall began with a teenage girl named Mary Sue Kitts, who broke the gang's cardinal rule, no snitching. Allen ordered her death, and when she was silenced, he plotted more murders from behind bars. In 1980, he orchestrated a triple homicide through prison contacts, targeting witnesses set to testify against him. It was murder by proxy, a blueprint for revenge that finally caught up with him in court. For more than 20 years, Allen waited on death row, watched over by guards who knew him as a sick, elderly man, not a criminal kingpin. As his body deteriorated, his lawyers mounted appeals arguing that executing a nearly blind, wheelchair-bound senior amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. They cited his declining health, diabetes, a heart attack, and near-total blindness. But every plea was denied. California's legal system had waited too long, and now it would wait no longer. January 17, 2006. The final hour arrived. The man who once boasted of the long arm of this Indian now sat still in San Quentin, waiting for the needle. Outside, activists protested. Inside, the state prepared for its most controversial execution in decades. Clarence Ray Allen's time was up. His last meal was vast and symbolic. Buffalo steak, fry bread, sugar-free pecan pie, and a bucket of all-white meat KFC, foods tied to his claimed native heritage. He addressed his family, his European pen pals, and fellow inmates. "Hoka, hey," he said, "it's a good day to die." At 12:20 a.m., lethal injection began. 18 minutes later, Clarence Ray Allen, age 76, was declared dead, the oldest person executed in modern California history. The public reaction was divided. Human rights groups condemned the execution as a barbaric relic of vengeance. Supporters of the death penalty argued that justice, no matter how delayed, must be served. Governor Schwarzenegger's refusal of clemency sent a message. Age and illness do not erase accountability. But critics saw it as political calculus. Tough on crime, soft on mercy. Witnesses described a surprisingly peaceful end. No struggle, no resistance. Just an old man closing his eyes beneath a beaded headband and eagle feather. Some present wept, others left in silence. But for those in the chamber, the moment was not just about Clarence Allen, it was about the state itself, exercising its ultimate power with quiet finality. Clarence Ray Allen's story is not easily classified as justice or injustice. It's a collision of violence, aging, and moral reckoning. He orchestrated murders, but he died old, blind, and frail. In the end, we must ask, does execution serve as punishment or as a mirror reflecting who we are when we wield it? For over a decade, a chilling fear gripped Southern California. Young lives vanished along the sun-drenched highways, leaving behind a trail of terror and unanswered questions. This is the story of William Bonin, the freeway killer, a name that became synonymous with unimaginable cruelty. We'll delve into his final hours, the trial that brought him to justice, and the haunting legacy he left behind.
William Bonin, a 34-year-old truck driver, is the man accused of being the freeway killer. Police say Bonin cruised the freeways of Southern California, picked up young boys in his van.
In 1974, I was kidnapped by William Bonin. He took me to a field, put my t-shirt around my neck, raped me, and strangled me with the tire iron through the sleeves of the shirt. With what I thought was my last breath, I said, "God help," and for some reason he stopped.
The details of Bonin's crimes painted a horrifying picture. He preyed on vulnerable young men and boys, his van becoming a mobile chamber of horrors. From 1979 to 1980, a wave of abductions, assaults, and murders terrorized communities. The victims, often hitchhikers or runaways, were lured with false promises. The investigation eventually pieced together the gruesome reality, linking Bonin to a growing list of victims. The trial was a harrowing affair, with chilling testimony from accomplices and the overwhelming weight of forensic evidence.
Just as Mr. Bonin drove the van of death around these streets and freeways, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to drive the van of justice up to him and tell him, "Get in, Mr. Bonin. Your killing is at an end."
Years passed on death row, a stark contrast to the terror he inflicted. Yet, the legal battles continued, a desperate attempt to escape the ultimate penalty. As his final hours approached, Bonin, who had remained largely silent for years, made a surprising request, a final interview. This was ultimately denied, highlighting the strict regulations surrounding death row inmates and media. His legal team launched last-ditch appeals, clinging to any hope of a reprieve. Around noon, Bonin's defense team urgently filed appeals, claiming he had been denied a fair trial. Their efforts were quickly rejected by the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which denied his plea for a stay of execution. The legal avenues closed. The finality of his situation became undeniable. The clock ticked relentlessly towards midnight, the appointed hour of reckoning. Bonin spent his last day in a state of unsettling calm, meeting with visitors, reading mail, a stark picture of the mundane against the backdrop of impending death. February 23rd, 1996. The day arrived. The culmination of years of legal proceedings and the raw grief of the victims' families was at hand. Bonin's final meal was a surprisingly ordinary request. His last words offered no remorse, no direct apology to the families he had devastated, but rather a detached commentary on the death penalty itself. Outside the prison walls, a divided public gathered, a stark reminder of the deeply contentious issue of capital punishment. Bonin's execution ignited further debate. Did it bring closure? Did it serve justice? The reactions were varied, from those who felt a sense of finality to others who questioned the morality and efficacy of capital punishment. The freeway killer case remains a stark reminder of the devastating impact of serial crime and the complex emotions surrounding its punishment. Outside San Quentin, a volatile crowd surged, filled with passionate protesters on both sides of the death penalty. Debate opponents held candles that flickered in the cool night breeze, while supporters gathered nearby. Among the demonstrators stood Act Mike Farrell, a vocal opponent of capital punishment. Eve Sweetser, a protest regular from Berkeley, sensed something different in the air. This one was angrier, she said grimly, much angrier. Inside the execution chamber, a handful of witnesses observed the final moments. Their accounts offer a chilling glimpse into the clinical process of state-sanctioned death. The lethal injection, a method deemed more humane than the gas chamber, brought a swift end to William Bonin's life. The witnesses noted his lack of remorse until the very end, a disturbing final detail in a case marked by profound suffering. The case of William Bonin, the freeway killer, serves as a grim testament to the darkness that can exist within humanity. His crimes left an indelible scar on the landscape of Southern California and ignited a fierce debate about justice and punishment. While his execution brought an end to his reign of terror, the pain endured by the victims' families and the questions surrounding capital punishment continue to resonate. This story compels us to confront the fragility of innocence and the enduring quest for meaning in the face of unimaginable loss. A Vietnam War hero, a shattered mind, a brother's devastating choice. Manuel Babbitt survived the bloody siege of Khe Sanh only to return home and fight a battle no one could see: PTSD, schizophrenia, addiction. When he committed a brutal crime during a psychotic break, it was his own brother Bill who led police to him after being promised help, not death. But instead of compassion, the state sentenced a mentally ill veteran to die. 18 years later, Bill would sit in the front row of his brother's execution, haunted, betrayed, and forever changed. This is not just the story of a crime, but of a country that failed the man it once sent to war.
Bill witnessed the execution of his brother, Manny Babbitt, in California in May of 1999.
And this is really the story that hooked me into the death penalty movement.
In December 1980, Manny Babbitt, struggling with untreated PTSD and schizophrenia, wandered the streets of Sacramento in a delusional state. Haunted by Vietnam, he mistook headlights for enemy fire and homes for bunkers. That night, he broke into the home of 78-year-old Leah Schindel, beating her severely during a paranoid episode. She later died from a heart attack induced by the trauma. The following night, he attacked another woman under similar circumstances. Arrested shortly after, Manny confessed but claimed no memory of the events. The prosecution painted him as a monster, but missing from the courtroom were the full facts: his war trauma, his head injuries, and his mental breakdowns. He was defended by a court-appointed attorney who was allegedly drunk throughout the trial. Despite having earned a Purple Heart in combat, Manny was sentenced to death by a jury that never fully understood the man behind the crime. Leah Schindel's brutally beaten, semi-nude body was found on the floor of her bedroom, partially covered by a blood-stained mattress. For 18 years, Manny Babbitt sat on death row in San Quentin, diagnosed with schizophrenia, denied proper treatment, and fighting a legal system that had already written him off. Support swelled. Veterans groups, former jurors, mental health advocates, even celebrities petitioned for clemency. One symbolic gesture came late. He received his Purple Heart for injuries at Khe Sanh, while shackled in chains, unable to raise his hand in salute. On May 3, 1999, Manny's 50th birthday, there were no gifts, no party, just a countdown. He refused a final meal and chose instead to fast in solidarity with homeless veterans. As the hour approached, his brother Bill stood by, overwhelmed by guilt, still clinging to the promise that Manny would be helped, not killed. At 12:37 a.m. on May 4, 1999, Manuel Babbitt was executed by lethal injection. Strapped down with narrow restraints to ease needle access, he didn't open his eyes, didn't look at the witnesses. His last words, issued through the warden, were, "I forgive all of you." He had requested that his $50 meal allowance be donated to homeless veterans. Outside, over 700 people gathered in protest. His death symbolizing a final betrayal not just of one man, but of every soldier discarded after war. The execution sent ripples through the nation. How had a war hero, failed by every institution meant to help him, ended up here? Bill Babbitt, once a supporter of capital punishment, now stood publicly against it. His trust in the system was shattered, and he made it his mission to expose the fatal flaw, the myth of justice for the mentally ill.
Bill Babbitt went to San Quentin prison and watched his brother be put to death by lethal injection. Nobody ever thanked him.
Manny Babbitt fought for his country. When he returned broken, that same country sentenced him to die. His case is a haunting mirror of systemic neglect, of veterans, the mentally ill, and the poor. And for Bill, the man who tried to do the right thing, it became a lifelong burden of sorrow and activism. Perhaps the real question is not whether justice was served, but whether it was ever truly sought. Stanley Tookie Williams, co-founder of the notorious Crips gang, became a symbol of redemption and controversy. Convicted of multiple murders, his transformation on death row sparked a national debate on justice and rehabilitation.
Thou shalt not kill. I don't care if you're the governor, president, me, you. Thou shalt not kill. Now, if dude killed somebody, let God deal with it. That's not my call. That's not your call. Anybody else's call. Just that simple.
In 1981, Williams was convicted for 4 brutal murders committed in 1979, including the killing of a convenience store clerk and a family during a motel robbery. Despite overwhelming evidence, Williams maintained his innocence, a stance that complicated his appeals for clemency.
Who is this guy? What did he do? King of the Crips? Really? I didn't know that. Nobody knew him.
During his 24 years on death row, Williams authored children's books and advocated against gang violence, earning multiple Nobel Peace Prize nominations. His transformation garnered support from celebrities and activists who campaigned for clemency.
At this time, I would like to bring to the microphone, I wish that more entertainers had the courage that this brother has had, that he would not just stand by, but he fought as he should have.
As the execution date approached, appeals for clemency intensified. Supporters highlighted his rehabilitation, while opponents emphasized the severity of his crimes. Governor Schwarzenegger faced mounting pressure from both sides. On December 13, 2005, at 12:35 a.m., Williams was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison. He declined a special last meal and maintained his innocence until the end. The execution drew mixed reactions, with some viewing it as justice served, while others saw it as a missed opportunity for redemption. The execution sparked nationwide debates on the death penalty and rehabilitation. Supporters mourned the loss of a reformed man, while critics upheld the verdict as justice. The event highlighted deep divisions in societal views on punishment and forgiveness.
Thou shalt not kill. I don't care if you're the governor, president, me, you, thou shalt not kill. Now, if dude killed somebody, let God deal with it. That's not my call. That's not your call. Anybody else's call. Just that simple.
Witnesses described the execution as solemn and orderly. Williams reportedly showed no resistance and faced his death with composure. The event left a lasting impression on those present, fueling ongoing discussions about capital punishment.
As far as, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's worrying about his political aspect of it. I think, as far as if he's worrying about votes, I think he might have lost a lot of votes from the black community now.
Stanley Tookie Williams' life journey from gang leader to anti-violence advocate challenges us to consider the complexities of justice, redemption, and the human capacity for change. His story continues to resonate, prompting reflection on the values and decisions that shape our society.